the latest from Octopus Deploy with John Bristowe.
The Azure and DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. I have a quick announcement. I don't do this often, but I'm hiring another .NET software engineer for ClearMeasure. And it's probably not a fit if literally this would be your first .NET position, but if this is your second position or beyond, give me a call. I'd love to mentor a young engineer and make you an awesome senior engineer while at the same time working at my company. Just get in touch, and you can go to clearmeasure.com to get those avenues. I'm excited for our guest today on the show. It is John Bristowe, and John brings over 20 years of experience in technology to his role as community director at Octopus Deploy. And his career includes time at Progress Software and Microsoft, among others, where he developed his skills in management and technology. He's known for a straightforward and engaging style and often speaks at industry conferences and shares practical tips and insights. John is also a HashiCorp Ambassador and part of the Progress Champions program. He enjoys creating content such as articles and webinars and podcasts and aims to help others in the tech community. And in his free time, he likes to stay informed about the latest tech developments and shares his learning with an online audience. His approach is always about sharing knowledge and learning together, and I really love that about him. John, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thanks. Episode, what is this? 300 and something? That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, well, I mean, got started in 2018. So one per week kind of adds up. But
nice. Well done.
I've never had you on the show. We've done some joint webinars together.
Yes.
But I've never interviewed you on the podcast. So I'm excited.
Oh, that's okay. Saving the best for last, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
That wasn't an enthusiastic yes. That's okay.
Hold on. Pause. My phone rang in my ear because I forgot to completely turn it off. You didn't hear it, but that's what distracted me, so I didn't react to you. I'm completely turning this off.
You're fine. Okay. With video, I find hard edits are fine on YouTube as well.
Oh yeah, they totally are.
Yep.
So okay. So then we did that, and I'm going to ask you. So glad to have you on here, and before we kind of dive into the latest going on at Octopus, for people who haven't heard you speak at a conference or whatnot, if you just go back in time and are there one or two moments in your career that maybe led you to working on the types of things you are today?
Yeah. So I joined Microsoft back in, 2005. That was a long time ago, many moons ago after graduating from university. And I ran into the folks who were part of the developer evangelism team, DP back in the day. And I thought this was pretty cool. What these folks do, and communicating and sharing your experiences with a technical audience always interests me because I love chatting with developers. And so kind of did a trial by fire, and got up on stage a few times, a few 100,000 times or something like that. And I've been talking to developers ever since. So my journey's led me in a lot of different directions, but I've been mostly focused on web development for a long time. Cut my teeth on a lot of WPF. I've been running Visual Studio since forever. Co-founded the Melbourne.NET user group back in 2001. I've been in the .NET game for a long time. But since then, it's been really interesting. I've been focusing more on the deployment pipeline, DevOps side now for the past 5 or 6 years now at Octopus. So it's been quite a journey.
Nice. And it has been a journey, specifically at Octopus. I've been kind of using that tool pretty much, since it was an open source project and, as it was going commercial. It's come a long way. I'd love to catch the users up on what's going on with Octopus. We have listeners to the show that use it literally every day, and then we have people who've heard of it, maybe never even done a demo before. So we got the whole gamut, and so much has happened in the automated deployment space, where automated deployments is like one piece of the DevOps environment as a whole. So just say in the last year, what are the like big things that people need to look at that might cause them to, if they haven't, give Octopus a look?
Yeah. So to your point, for folks who haven't seen or heard about Octopus before, we're basically a software deployment tool. So we're part of your pipeline. Some folks who actually use it don't use it every day without them knowing it. So it's kind of sits in the background, does its job really well. So if you go to octopus.com, you can check us out there. So we've had a lot of innovations over the last year, and they range from anywhere from doing a lot of work with Kubernetes deployments to doing work along the way to new innovations around a feature we have called Platform Hub. We've even added some AI capabilities to Octopus. It's been a really busy year. And so I've been really excited by what's been happening there. We do talk to a lot of folks about their deployment pipelines. So a large part of our conversations with customers is also talking to them about, like, what are you doing around deployments? Are you doing continuous delivery, et cetera? Because it's not just a solution that will help make the ends meet. You have to talk about the culture. You have to talk about the mindset of your development team. I know that for a lot of developers that this is like flossing. This is the stuff they don't want to talk about or do, but it's really, really important. In fact, I would argue that setting up your deployment pipeline is one of the first things you should do. I know that you evangelize this a lot at Clear Measure, but it is really important. If you can't ship your software, how are you going to get it to your customers? So it's something that we espouse quite a bit. But once you set it up and you have it, and you have the automations ready to go and you have your pipeline set, you're in a really good standing. And, there's a reason why Deploy on Friday is such a joke in our industry, is because a lot of people don't have their pipelines set up effectively, or their pipelines are so brittle that they can't ship on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. They should be able to. They should be able to ship on those days if they have secure pipelines. And so that's a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. But to answer your original question, what have we been up to in the last year? A lot. So if you want to check it out, I make the joke all the time. Go to roadmap.octopus.com. Make it a bookmark, if not your homepage, and you'll see all the innovations we've added there. So we do a lot of work around the product. And so, if you're keen to check us out, you can sign up for a free trial, octopus.com. Sorry, that's one sort of sales pitch I'll do in this podcast, I promise.
Well, the best tools don't need any sales pitch, and there's a small handful of tools in the deployment space that you can label best of breed, where it's like, okay, unless you have a very specific reason to use something else, pick one of these three. And then of course, and you and the other, and Azure pipelines, y'all are battling, to see who can, and that's awesome. It's competition.
Sure.
But for, like you mentioned, to set up your deployment pipeline first. I would say, just to add, in this era where everybody is trying to figure out what the heck AI-driven development means and what it means to actually have a computer, generate maybe some of the easier code.
Okay.
If we're going to have more feature branches, more pull requests, more code coming through our environment, and if we're going to be moving faster, then any part of the deployment any part of the whole process that requires a manual person to literally do anything is going to become a bottleneck.
Maybe.
Okay.
No, it depends. It depends on how good that person is, I guess. I've had a healthy skepticism towards AI for a while. I've been using AI for a long time. So I do another show called Eat Sleep Code, and I co-hosted with Ed Charbonneau of Progress. And we've been talking about AI for years, and we've been utilizing ChatGPT and Claude and all the innovations that are going on there. And we've seen good uses for AI, for code gen, for other things as well. In the pipeline, the way that we're looking at it is we're taking a very systematic approach to the way in which we're applying AI within Octopus. So right now we have a solution called the AI Assistant. It's kind of similar to Copilot in GitHub in the sense that it's there to help, but it's not there to take over, right? And so you don't want necessarily pipelines being driven primarily by AI, but if you annotate or supplement your pipelines through code generation. If you're generating YAML for workflows, things like that, it can help. So the AI assistant we have in Octopus gives you a bunch of really cool things. It obviously does prompt-based generation of projects. So if you create a project in Octopus, it will do that through a prompt. We have a deployment failure analyzer. So if a deployment fails, we can give you some help or hints as to why it failed. There are other features like that are common across, and I'm trying to speak obviously generically here. But AI is there to help; it's not there to hinder. And if it isn't, then I think it's not serving its role well. It's that common meme where you see on GitHub where you have like Claude versus Copilot fighting each other with PRs. Sometimes it can get in the way, and so it really depends on how you want to apply your AI strategy. But it's effective in a lot of different cases, and we've been using it internally for a long time. We were initially skeptics, and we've kind of become more proponents or advocates of AI. But we're slowly taking our time, and then we're moving towards building out an MCP, a model context protocol implementation for Octopus, which gives you more semantic weight when talking between LLMs.
Yeah, nice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we had a guest on the show quite a while back that talked about that just mentioned the Argo consolidation and acquisition. How's that modified the Octopus strategy for .NET developers, and what do they need to know in the wake of the Argo integration? Yeah,
so the company you're referring to is called CodeFresh. We acquired them probably over a year ago. And they provide a solution for Argo, which is a solution for doing and managing a control plane for Kubernetes. And so that's been really, really well. We're working on an innovation right now that will get Argo CD support inside of Octopus. And so Argo CD is a well understood, well loved solution for the Kubernetes community. And we are actually maintainers of the Argo project. So we have a number of people at Octopus who maintain Argo. And so they do code commits, etc. We're one of the top contributors for the Argo project. And so bringing those two products closer together is something we've been working on. And so there's features in CodeFresh that aren't in Octopus and vice versa. But ultimately, Octopus is the deployment tool that we spend a lot of time talking to customers on. For folks who want to do deployments to Kubernetes and supporting Argo, that is a feature we're adding right now. It's actually on our roadmap, which I highlighted earlier. If you're looking at supporting things like Kubernetes, we have a feature called Live Object Status inside of Octopus. This is really powerful because, as folks know, kubectl, which is a command line tool for Kubernetes, often doesn't provide as much information or semantic context that you need when troubleshooting applications running in Kubernetes. And the whole ecosystem around Kubernetes is enormous. Like it's just a massive thing. And there's a reason for this because Kubernetes is really complex. I liken it to stepping onto an aircraft and looking at the control set for a pilot. It's like a Boeing or an Airbus where, you're looking at all these buttons and knobs and you don't know where to start. There's also the whole taxonomy around Kubernetes itself. What's a pod? What's a service? How do I define controllers? What's ingress and egress, etc.? How do I define my configuration? That whole story. And then am I utilizing resources effectively? So there's a lot of what's a container? Things like that. So there's lots of stuff that you have to learn. Unfortunately, as I said before, there's a huge ecosystem around Kubernetes, which is great. Getting back to your original question about Argo, we're maintainers of the project. We have a show called Argo Unpacked that we talk about Argo every week. We're doing a lot of stuff in the community and with the project itself.
And that's called Argo Unpacked?
Yes.
Awesome. We'll put that in show notes. So one of it's not necessarily I guess it is a feature, but it's just one of the differences. You mentioned workflow, GitHub Actions. You can use those for builds and whatnot. You're modifying a text file. You go into Azure pipelines and you're modifying a text file.
Yes.
But TeamCity and Octopus are two of the industry leaders who have said no. We need a designer. We're not going to put our people in just editing a text file and then that didn't work. Okay, how do I muck around with this?
Okay.
What is the thought? What is the thought, and why have you guys stood by the absolute need for a designer experience.
Well, let's be fair to GitHub. It is obvious as to why GitHub provides a text-based version of its workflows, which is based around YAML, of course. And the reason for that is because it's based on Git, and Git is entirely file-based, etc. So it's totally understandable as to why that's the case. Now, GitHub has done a lot of work and innovation around this space to provide more of that context through its UI. So to be fair to GitHub. To answer your question, we support both, actually. So you can actually utilize the visual design experience for defining your workflows that do your deployments in a design experience, which is great. We have a feature called the process editor, which is basically like, it's like if you use a workflow tool like Zapier, it's the same sort of idea. You've got these boxes that interconnect each other that defines your workflow. But if you want, you can certainly define that in text. We have a config as code is a feature that we have that we love, actually, and allows you to define your deployment workflows in a derivative of HCL, which is HashiCorp configuration language. It's like that. We came up with our own called OCL. So it's basically like a similar syntax, but allows you to define them in text, which is great. And to be fair, I mean, Azure DevOps pipelines has switched as well. So their default has gone from the visual experience to the text experience. And so you now have a text first experience with Azure pipelines, which is great. Jenkins, TeamCity, BuildKite, trying to think of other CI solutions off the top of my head. They all support a text-based format to a certain extent. TeamCity definitely does espouse that sort of design first experience as well. Their design experience has actually been going all overhaul. So props to JetBrains. They've been doing a lot of great work around TeamCity, their visual experience. Even Jenkins has gotten a bit of a facelift recently, so it's been really interesting to see. The reason why I care about this so much is because, of course, CI is often thought of as the first step to defining a pipeline. I would argue that maybe deployment should be, but when you think about your pipeline, when we describe a pipeline, some folks may not know this, but a pipeline is essentially, it's kind of like that Rube Goldberg machine that you see on Bugs Bunny, where it goes in one end, comes out the other. And, it's that sort of systems that are interlinked or interconnected that basically spit out your software at the end. And it's all the things that happen in between your build, your test, your deployment, configuration, setting up servers, setting up configuration, running Terraform, things like that. Those all come into play when defining your pipeline. But to that end, we support both. So use what you like.
Yeah. Well, I'm a proponent of the designer just because there's so many areas where we have to remember so much syntax. I mean, IntelliSense is great and all that, but it's just, so I love the designer. I've always loved.
Well, you can use AI for that, right? Well, AI will help.
Yeah. And that's a good question. It's 5 years from now, like the UI of literally every bit of software, 5 years from now, will we care about, will text boxes and buttons be the best UI, or will it just be, hey, what things can you do? Okay, do that.
Yeah, exactly. Do as I mean, not what I say, is this sort of adage that people describe when they talk about AI. I mean, if you've used a workflow tool, like I said before, like Zapier, for example, it's a classic sort of scenario. One of the first things they do, Zapier is like, I would say the sort of ultimate workflow tool for a lot of folks, because it allows them to stitch together systems really quickly. And one of the first things they say is like, okay, here's your design surface, but you can just tell us what you want and just we'll gen that out for you. They still push you towards the design first experience, because at the end of the day, there has to be a knob or switch you have to touch at the end of the day. But maybe AI gen first is the approach, maybe.
Yeah. There's so many forms, literally so many times you have to type, first name. Okay, let me go to the last name field.
Sure.
I mean, could I just hold up my ID, or look, it's cached in the browser. Hey, browser, come on, just put. So LastPass and all these other things can do some of that, but just holistically. Anyway, I digress.
No, it's a fair comment, right? It's a tough challenge because a lot of developers they're like, look, what I want to do. Don't play dumb. You just get my code to the people who care about it. So I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
Now, there's this joke that's gone around on Twitter that is number of applications in the real world that don't have a database, 0. Number of DevOps and deployments examples that actually have a database, almost 0. And so talk about that, because we do a lot of Octopus and deployment consulting, and invariably there's so many people where they deploy their application, but somehow they think of their data storage and databases and file systems as different from the application, and it's all manual. And we help them through that. But how do you advise people when configuring what should be in and what should be out?
Use Octopus for deployments to databases. It's fine. So if you're doing, typically when you think of the classic DBA, they're thinking about things like diffs and schema, data changes, etc. You have to have that system up and running all the time. You want changes to be atomic. You don't want schemas in different versions, things like that. So to their credit, I mean, there are solutions out there that provide abilities to migrate schemas, but oftentimes these are done in concert with other things you're doing in your application. Like a code change is going to reflect a schema change, and then the data itself also has to probably be migrated as well. So you want to do that as in a sense, like a saga, a long-standing transaction, but in an atomic way to migrate that change. And so utilizing tools like Octopus allow you to do that. There are a number of ways in which you can do this. Database deployments is a very common scenario that people use Octopus for. And this is why you define it as a series of steps. This is so for folks who haven't used Octopus before, we define a deployment as a series of steps that are used together to define essentially what we call a release. And part of those steps will be things like, hey, notify the stakeholders that something's happening in Slack. Then send an email, maybe get a validation that this is okay to do. Then do a schema diff, utilize a tool like Flyway, for example, to do that, that change management. Check to see if everything looks good. I'm adding more fingers here because there's like lots of steps. Then migrate the code changes. Maybe you want to do a blue-green deployment. Maybe you want to do a canary, things like that, whatever deployment pattern you want. Validate that things are running, do system checks, maybe run configs, maybe run service packs. There's a feature we have in Octopus called Runbooks, which allow you to do things like that allow you to do maintenance on servers, etc. So you may want to run a runbook or two. And then after all of that, then you run your deployment scripts, etc., for the database. And then once everything is done, then you can safely say a deployment has successfully occurred. And so this is part of the sort of mindset we have at Octopus when thinking about deployments. And it really doesn't matter what you're deploying. We want those things to be safe. We want them to be reliable. We want you to support the patterns that you have as part of your deployment process, but we also want to be able to safely roll back if necessary. So that's a feature that most deployment products sometimes don't have. You mentioned GitHub earlier, for example. So you can do deployments with GitHub. You can do deployments with a bunch of CI solutions. The problem is a lot of these patterns aren't baked in. They have no concept of environments. This is sort of another sales pitch. Apologies, I broke my promise already. But a lot of these tools, they don't provide notions of these things in the product themselves. And so by providing the peanut butter and chocolate combination, which is GitHub plus Octopus, for example, you get the best of both worlds. So do CI with, for example, GitHub or TeamCity or Jenkins or BuildKite, etc., and then pass that on down the pipeline as you should over to Octopus for other capabilities. Then further down the pipeline, you may want to do observability, Datadog or Grafana, things like that. Then pass it on down the chain to the next person in the pipeline. That's essentially how we think of it.
Yeah, my favorite combination with Octopus Deploy. Octopus Deploy doesn't do version control. So use Git. Octopus Deploy also doesn't like to run tests and show you which tests failed and unit tests, integration tests. Okay, that's what build servers are for. And then you have a build. Okay, now we deploy. To
be fair, we integrate with Git. I should mention that we do actually support Git, so you can have your as I mentioned before, config as code. We can have that based in Git as well. So just to clarify something there. Sorry.
Oh yeah, connect to, as opposed to being a Git host.
Yes, of course.
Now, one of the features it's on the list for 2025, the last couple of additions, but I think is a big one, and it is the config as code for runbooks. And the reason it seems to be big in my mind is that if the system of deploying and keeping the software up requires some script to be run, you want to configure it as a run book to check some things, and if we don't properly check some things and recover from some anomalies while the software is running, then the software can go down. And if we don't have a way to automatically verify that with every version of the software, well, now a bug can creep into the logic, And if it's only global, well, with config as code, now we can actually modify and test those things on a feature branch, because now we can diff that runbook configuration on our branch. We can deploy to a branch, environment. And that seems exciting for me anyway.
Yeah, it is. So just for terminology purposes, people may not have heard the term runbook. A runbook is basically an automated operational procedure. So this lets your teams script and standardize repetitive tasks outside of the core deployment process. So these are things like update your server, restart your web server, run configs, etc. And so it's like a deployments process in the sense that it's a set of steps that you can trigger on demand or on a schedule, and it runs against the same infrastructure targets, environments. We have a feature called tenants as well that you can run that on. But doing this as config as code, which is being able to represent it as text and then having that backed by Git, does give you a lot of very rich power and functionality. And this is a long-standing feature request that was in our roadmap for forever. And so now it's something that that we're very keen on, and a lot of customers are using. So common use cases we see all the time are things like, as I said before, restarting servers, etc. These are things you have to do. Rotating secrets, refreshing certificates, like all the maintenance stuff, like database management, maintenance tasks, scaling up and down infrastructure. And you typically will run these in concert with deployment steps.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it is a simple concept, but the uses are all over the place. Like just for dev and test servers, most teams don't have 24-hour a day development going on. You work during your daylight hours and then you go to sleep. And so if you have cloud-based dev environments and they're not automatically elastic going down to zero, then you're paying twice as much as you really have to. And if we just scheduled, hey, whatever the end of the day is, let's just scale down to zero as close to as we can get. And when the shift is about to start, in the morning, whenever that is, let's get them back and ready.
Yeah, cost management is a huge thing in Kubernetes, for example. And so being able to manage this stuff via runbook or script turns out to be incredibly important. And so I'm with you. You definitely want to make sure you're taking care of these costs, and you want to make sure you're doing that in a very methodical and careful way.
Yeah. Well, another scenario that I think applies to everybody is health checking. You can have other just generic IT tools that ping an endpoint and saying, okay, is this system healthy? Is that healthy? And okay, but what if it's not? These generic IT systems, they can notify somebody, and then somebody has to spring into action. But if that's integrated with Octopus Deploy with connections to the application, well, now we can do smart things where, this component is unhealthy. Well, you know what? Step 1, try this. Step 2, try this. Step 3, let's see if we can automatically get it back up and healthy by having that integrated with the system that knows the application.
Health checks are really important, obviously, when deploying to things like remote locations, like cloud-based targets. So if you're deploying to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, these things are really, really important. And having those integrated as part of your deployment strategy is going to be critical.
Yeah. There's so much we could go through on this deployment journey, and there's some simple things that you can do in your continuous integration, your build server, to get some simple deployments up and running. What would be maybe a sign or two that your environment is just a little bit more complex and you need to reach for a best of breed tool like Octopus Deploy, and maybe you've outgrown just some homegrown PowerShell script that does your deployments? Yeah,
there's a lot of this DIY sort of CD or continuous delivery that goes on. If you find yourself rolling up your sleeves, cutting a lot of scripts, and you're having a tough time managing it, give us a call. That's sort of the old 90s approach, but obviously visit octopus.com. And if you're looking to get a safe and sane approach towards deployments, if you want to deploy on Saturday, you want to deploy on Friday, things like that, you want to have the ability to roll back, you want to have safe and sane deployments, you want to deploy using patterns, you want to incorporate capabilities like runbooks, you want to be able to understand this stuff without having a lot of noise as part of your pipeline. Octopus.com is definitely the place to go. That's the number to ring, so to speak.
Nice. And kind of as we close up here, is there anything else that the listeners kind of need to know about what's going on with Octopus.
Yeah, so we have a really cool innovation that's coming. We'll have a webinar on this later this month. It's called Platform Hub, and this is essentially a new capability we're adding, which basically replaces the fragile, sort of homegrown delivery tooling with a structured, scalable foundation. And this enables platform engineering at an enterprise scale. So we're adding two capabilities or core capabilities around this. One is with process templates, so being able to build repeatable, governed pipeline sections centrally and apply version control to prevent drift and reduce duplication. And the second one is policies. So with governance, we're able to apply these compliance, security, and operational checks into pipelines. And so these two capabilities through an integrated, centralized dashboard is something that we're adding. And Platform Hub is a huge, huge push for us into the platform engineering space. We're really keen about this. Basically allows you to reduce your overall delivery drift. It accelerates your onboarding through repeatable patterns. It ensures compliance and it centralizes everything. And so the reason why we're doing this is because oftentimes, as you mentioned just now, homegrown solutions don't scale. They're costly. They're difficult to manage. And so we're trying to move in this direction to help platform teams adopt a capability that gives them much, much better forward progress in this space. And so it solves a huge need in the platform engineering space by replacing all these DIY pipelines with governed reusable templates.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome because there's so many teams out there and teams that use Octopus Deploy that once you get dozens and dozens and over 100 deployment projects, because that's how much software is in your organization, multiple teams and pieces of software, well, they're going to diverge. And then the question is, oh shoot, okay, well, what patterns do we want to adopt for ourselves? And how do we, manually get to some consistency across all of our teams? Every piece of software is different, but the concept of, okay, what do we do? Well, let's have a standard where we always, check the health of the deployed component right after we do the deployment. Let's make sure it's up and running and happy before we just continue. I mean, just ideas like that. So I'm really happy about Platform Hub.
Awesome. Well, I hope to see you on the webinar. That'll be later this month. So you can check it out at octopus.com/webinars.
Fantastic. Well, John, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and
thank you.
Catching us up with Octopus. This is great.
Yeah.
And until next time, dear listener, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.